All right, I feel good. I feel good. I did something today that I haven't done in years, which was wake up early, watch a video game related release or a press conference or whatever, and then take notes, which is something I used to do during E3 back in the day, but E3 hasn't existed for 5 years, so I haven't had the same kind of chances to do that I used to. But I think you all know why we're here. Based, Nintendo branded merchandise. You could probably guess what I'm going to talk about. It's the Nintendo Switch 2, which was hotly anticipated for the last couple of months since Nintendo just kind of dropped a trailer on us to kind of confirm what everyone already knew from many, many weeks of leaks before that. So um, yeah, it was over an hour long. It had a lot of things I liked, a lot of things I didn't like. And a friend of mine asked me, "Oh, what'd you think about it? Or do I want to get your thoughts?" I was like, "Well, I got thoughts." Kind of a Nintendo super nerd, so I figured, well, if I write it all down and I'm going to explain it to him, I might as well just record it and make a video. So here we go. Um, I'm not going to play the whole thing here. I'll just kind of skip through it as we go through my notes. With the way I organized notes, let's see. I essentially just created like a document where, because like as I wrote it all down, I was doing bullet points just as I noticed things in the video. So it's kind of in chronological order, but then I rearranged it because they had kind of system details and game details kind of woven throughout the whole press conference. And I wanted to kind of disentangle those and get two separate lists of what they had to announce here. Let's see. I guess first hardware bit to talk about there is that C button, which we all saw in the leaks, and people have been speculating, what is it? What's it for? What's it going to be? Turns out it's for chat, game chat. Whoop de doo. Nintendo finally getting in on game chat, 20 years after Xbox introduced it with headsets and Xbox Live and everything. So thanks, I guess. Maybe people will use it. Maybe they won't. We'll see. I was disappointed though, because I was in the camp of people that thought the C button was going to have something to do with casting. Like maybe you'd be able to hold the Switch 2 and then send video to the dock without the Switch 2 being in the dock, maybe. But no, that's not what that button's for. And I guess that makes sense given that the C button is appearing on things like the new Pro controller. Let's see. So obviously we're just getting more info here on Mario Kart 9. Uh, Pause this and gather my thoughts here. Skip ahead a bit more. Yeah, there you have it on the right Joy-Con, right beneath the home button. We've got our game chat button. I will say though that social kind of features are a missing piece for Nintendo. That was just not something that was really incorporated with like the first Switch very well. They just launched like a separate app on your phone where you could chat with people. It was, yeah, Nintendo was just not ready for prime time as far as social features that PlayStation and an Xbox, quite frankly, had figured out 20 years ago already. Uh, so, yeah, they're getting in on it now. They're giving it a dedicated button. Maybe that'll be good. Who knows? We'll see. but giving us a bit more on the hardware here. Actually, there's probably an easier way to do this. Let's step the resolution down. Hey, there we go. It'll run a little smoother, hopefully. I saw an article once about this phrase, alone together, which kind of just describes millennials and Zoomers and young people all just being on their phones and not talking to each other. So I do like them kind of uh, putting a spin on that. It's like we're alone together. So if we're together, then it's everybody's online together. Like hooray! Um, yeah, still those social features. This is stuff that, quite frankly, should have been day one on the Wii U. And here we are, two consoles later, and we're supposed to like applaud for that. But yeah, and then the microphone built into the Switch, so your friends can hear you hollering slurs at it from all the way across the room. Like awesome. Skipping ahead a bit more. Yeah, this is very cool having like spectator mode built in so you can share your screen or see someone else's screen. I don't know how much I'll use that personally, but it's it's got potential. I'm sure for streamers and people who make content and have people that would tune in for that sort of thing, that can go a long way to giving you like ease of use for recording. So yeah, then we get this horrid invention here, uh, the switch to camera. Again, behind the times, weird and tone deaf. Like, what are we doing? Why do we have a Connect on the Switch? Who asked for this? It's like the PlayStation camera, the eye camera. This stuff already came out and flopped years ago. So Nintendo's now getting in on it to also flop with it, I guess. Have fun with that. Also, this is exactly what like parents are afraid of with online features and multiplayer and that sort of thing. The question is like, how do we protect kids and then also give people approachable social features? And a camera is just asking for trouble. You can have strangers who can see your kids or show them things that you don't want. And this is going to have to be very carefully watched, very carefully regulated. Of course, they go in depth on parental controls at some point in the stream, but the camera is just introducing things that haven't really been an issue since the 3DS because the 3DS has cameras, but they had pretty limited multiplayer use of those. I hate that too. Got to be honest. The second USB port on top of the Switch being utilized for accessories, it works. So I guess go ahead. That it's just such a inelegant and poor way to integrate that as far as cable management. I'm sure there's a way to plug it in to the back of the dock, but if that's going to live in your kind of main setup, that cable has got to go somewhere else other than the top of the Switch. I wouldn't do that as like a permanent solution because you're going to have to unplug that every time you take the Switch 2 out of the dock. Yeah, they get into a feature here, which, like you see in my notes, the Nintendo DS had Game Share, which was awesome and amazing, and I liked it because you could own a game, and then your friend didn't have to own the same game, but you pop the game card in your DS, you boot up multiplayer, and you connect to each other's DSs, and then you can essentially share your game with that person in a limited way. Usually, you didn't have like full multiplayer completely unlocked for both people. You'd have one person with access to, like, I remember in Mario Kart DS, guest players who didn't own the game, if you're doing game sharing, they would play as a shy guy, but the host player had all of the characters and cards. So that was a fun kind of way to introduce that. So yeah, they're bringing it over to the Switch 2 game share. It's cool. It's again, it's something they've done before, and it's odd the Switch didn't have it. Now that now that I think about it, yeah, we get in-depth info on the screen here, which is good because we've had some info from leaks, but we have official info now, which is good. So going from 720p to 1080p, which is fine. That's like what most phones are. The advancement, though, that I did not expect, yeah, this 120 frames per second. Wow. Yeah, like, okay, if it's low cost enough to be able to do that, go for it. Let's do it. And of course, people are going, why is it LCD when the first one was LCD? And then they made the Switch OLED, which has a better screen. It's an OLED screen. So why isn't the Switch to an OLED? It's probably for two reasons. Number one, to keep the costs down. Number two, you get a mid-cycle refresh later on when you make a Switch to Pro, Switch to Ultimate, Super Switch to whatever they would want to call such a thing. So magnets built into the controllers, of course, so they snap in. And it's specifically the SL and SR buttons themselves that have the magnets in them. Don't know why we needed to know that, but they put that in the stream here. Oh yeah, and then the thing that nobody was asking for, it was leaked and people are talking about it, but I mean, be honest. Like, if you have a Joy-Con and you put it on a tabletop, like I've got here, it's like a weird thin mouse. It works. It's just, who asked for this? Who wanted the mouse controls? I guess the significant thing here is it is confirmed. The optical is not just a rumor. It's not just an image. It's not just a thing that we see in the video. They do confirm here that we are getting that. I can see that being good for things like Civilization or games where you have to click a lot. The mouse function being built into the Joy-Con, it works. At that point, though, why not just allow the Switch to connect other accessories like mice and keyboards with Bluetooth? Because then you could do the same thing, but with dedicated hardware, like a proper gaming mouse. Yeah, I'm gonna pause right there because that is nice. That new kickstand. I've got both of the kind of first switches here to compare. Yeah, the first model has this measly little kickstand that you can knock this thing over so easily. Where there we go. Um, yeah, that's what hides your SD card, but then it's only on this one side in the corner. So you so much as tap this and doop, falls over. So that was improved on the OLED switch here, where clearly it's a much more substantial, thick, just full length kind of like panel that flips open and holds your switch. Much sturdier, very nice. It's got this little cutout here so you can run a cable through the kickstand, and it looks like they have done the same thing here because you got this little notch cut out in the bottom, but then you've got this U shape where you can also run cables over the top of the like the back of the kickstand here. So you have kind of more places to do that. And of course, two USB-C ports, which was in the trailer a few weeks ago. Something really cool with that, though, if you've ever been bedridden or in the hospital or sick or something, just lying in bed for a long period of time, and you've got your switch, like the fact you have to plug into the bottom to play it, if you've got it kind of like against your body or on your chest or your stomach, that is so uncomfortable to have the cable plugged in while you're trying to use the thing. So that's really underrated, I think, for like accessibility reasons to have that port in the top. Yeah, 4K resolution for the first time on a Nintendo console. This is big. Nintendo games are just beautiful. So they'll be able to take advantage of the resolution in a way that other developers might not be able to. And there's beautiful games by people that aren't Nintendo, obviously, but we've had 4K games for years at this point, and so what? Like these games are gorgeous and colorful, and that's really more what it's about. It's like what kind of impression are you leaving on the user, not necessarily how many polygons are in the screen or how many pixels. So Nintendo having a bit more horsepower and actually getting into 4K, it's exciting. I really hope we see like Pikmin 5 in extremely sharp 4K 60 hertz. That would be amazing. On the cooling fan in the dock will hopefully avoid some of the issues that like the first gen switches had, where if you just kept them docked all the time, they could deform a little bit. It's almost like the switch. It wasn't melting, but it was like expanding a tiny bit from too much heat. So they don't want a repeat of last time. It looks like. Our tech demo game here called, what is it called? Switch to Tour. It's not included by default, but it really should be. People have been comparing this to like Astrobot on the PlayStation, and I could see why. That totally makes sense. This, I mean, it really is such a love letter to the hardware itself that it would be a perfect thing to include with the hardware to introduce you to the hardware. Like asking money for this as its own game, I don't know. I don't know about this. I'm sure it'll be cool and fun and interesting. Um, but like we had Wii Sports on the Wii. We had nothing on the Switch. Like you had Breath of the Wild. There you go. Like that's kind of all you had, and that wasn't at launch, was it? Because it was like 1-2 Switch at launch, and then Breath of the Wild. But it's like that was really the only game to have early on with the Switch. So we need to get back to having a really good game included with the console. Astrobot was a wonderful, or I guess Astro's Playroom, excuse me, is a great example of that. And this again could be a great game in that mold, but like, why is it not with the hardware? Why is it not included? So we get our spicy new cartridges here, same size and shape, probably to save money on fabricating them, but then faster read and write speeds, or I guess read speeds. And yeah, we got to upgrade our SD cards as well. So now we're on micro SD Express or whatever's better or faster. I'm curious too whether it will load slower SD cards and just won't let you use some new features, or if it just won't see them as compatible at all. Okay, I'm gonna pause again here because I'm not thrilled about this controller, but I'm not like the biggest fan of the Switch Pro controller. It's okay. It's good. It does its job well. But my issue with it is it's just so Xbox like. Here's the Xbox, here's the Switch, right? It's just it's the same thing. Like Nintendo copied the button placement, other than the ABXY being in their traditional places on the Nintendo controller, whereas Xbox flipped them around so that A is on the bottom, which always throws people off going between Xbox and Nintendo. But I digress. So the stick placement is really something where I think Nintendo had an opportunity and then kind of dropped it. So you see, we've got the offset sticks here, left joystick in the upper position, right joystick in the lower position. I will say I prefer this to PlayStation because on PlayStation, when they're both in the lower position, I can actually touch my thumbs together. If you're going right on the left joystick and left on the right joystick, they're just a little too close, being in the lower spot. Um, so the solution that Nintendo had on the Wii U, which I thought was great, was on the Pro controller. Here, you've got the sticks in the upper, like the raised position on both sides, and then on your buttons and D-pad down below, which is fantastic. That's like the button layout of the Super Nintendo inside of a larger controller or something. But you get the symmetry of like a PlayStation controller, and then the more comfortable stick placement of an Xbox controller. But this they just didn't revisit this, and I don't know why. I would greatly prefer a version of the Pro controller that was more in the mold of the Wii U version with the sticks in the upper position rather than offset. But whatever, like they came up with this controller design. They're doing it again. It's fine. It is what it is. And then we've got that chat button built in there, so it makes sense now that that would not be the cast button that I had hoped it might be. Oh yes, and then mappable back buttons or back paddles, kind of like the Xbox Pro controller or PlayStation Pro controllers. I like that, having some modular aspects built in. And then, of course, the headphone jack built into the controller. Wonderful, convenient feature. Probably great for voice chat, of course, because you have a wired connection to your microphone, essentially. And then this shocked me. June 5th. You sure about that? 4 months? You've already made millions and millions of these units. Like you're ready to start taking pre-orders and shipping. Are you sure about that? I'm excited. Like 4 months is a long amount of time, but it's not a long amount of time when you think about it. When you're a company of this kind of size and scale launching a product this big, I thought for sure it would be a holiday release, but glad to be wrong if it's here sooner than that. That'd be nice. And going a little bit earlier in the year gives them some opportunity to get some games released, and then you get some holiday bundles. You have more options that way if you do the release earlier in the year, so that makes sense. Back in 2017, I ended up waiting a few months on the Switch because in like March of 2017, Breath of the Wild was kind of the only thing to play, and in October of 2017, I bought this guy, the Mario Odyssey version of the Switch, because that was like the first game that I wanted that wasn't on Wii U. The same kind of model. It was like 6 months later that came out in October, and of course they had a couple different bundles in the first year for the Switch, so they're trying to do the same thing. This I thought was kind of strange. Like they mentioned there's going to be Switch 2 versions of some games or like updates, and like Mario Party Jamboree. Okay, like it's fun. I like the first one, Super Mario Party. I like the second one here. But like, who was sitting there going like, "Yes, I need Super Mario Party Jamboree updated for the Switch too, or I'm not buying one." Like, that's strange. That's a weird one to me. And I'm sure it'll look good and play great and whatever. Like, that's fine. It's just that was a weird one to announce. I would have announced like a Mario Odyssey um, Switch 2 update or some of the other major games that Nintendo's released. That they'll get into a few more of these. Let's look at the notes here. They'll mention some of the Switch 2 updated ones. Yeah, so here we are. Got Switch 2 Tour, Switch 2 for Mario Party Jamboree. This is this is very exciting. It'll come up in a minute here. Obviously, seeing my notes is just going to spoil everything because you can see it all there. But uh, skip ahead a bit. Showing off some of the new optical controls there in Mario Party. That's a strange one though because party games aren't usually done around a table unless they're like board games. Like if I'm hanging out in my living room, sitting on the couch or something, there isn't necessarily a hard surface right there to use the optical functions with, unless I'm doing it on like my pants leg or something. That would be strange. I mean, it's optical, so it would work, but this gets back to what I was saying. Like, why are we doing this? Who wants this? I'm just trying to make the Joy-Con more convoluted, I guess. Yeah, here we go. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom getting Switch 2 editions, which I will gladly pay for. Back when Breath of the Wild came out on the Wii U, I did not realize that on the Switch it ran at a higher resolution and had better audio. The resolution I didn't care for that much, but as you may have guessed, audio is quite important to me. So having enhanced kind of environmental sounds and music, that's what really got me to rebuy that game within just a few months. Where I played it, I 100%ed it on the Wii U. I did all the DLC and then did it all again on the Switch, but with sharper audio and video. So having the chance to do it again on the Switch too feels very redundant because I've already done that. But I do love these games. I wouldn't be wearing, a shirt of Tears of the Kingdom if these games weren't very special and important to me. Like I got the Tears of the Kingdom uh, OLED Switch. I got the Tears of the Kingdom Pro controller. Like I'm here for it. I'm in it. This does raise questions though. If you wanted to like start a save file on the Switch and then continue it on the Switch 2 version, would you be able to just like buy the upgrade and then copy over your save? And Kirby and the Forgotten Game. I've heard great things. I have actually bought this game. I haven't played it yet. People love it though. I do need to get into it. And since they'll be updating it for the Switch too, that might be the time to do it. Since I've just been like sleeping on this game for like a year. Like, look at that. Kirby just turns into a bunch of different things. It's like Kirby's answer to Mario Odyssey in many ways. Oh, here we go. Metroid Prime 4. It looks like Metroid Prime. Yeah, they don't give us anything on the story or anything about the game really. They get into the technical details here, which is fantastic because I thought they'd give us more on like the story or what Samus is up to. But no, they mentioned we're doing 1080 120 or we're doing 4K 60 with Metroid Prime 4. That's awesome. That's going to look great. And yeah, Pokemon, I fell off of playing Pokemon decades ago. They haven't made the games new or interesting for a long time, but people are excited. I don't remember if this is the one they're excited about. That's the thing. I'm so disconnected from Pokemon. I couldn't tell you if people are anticipating this or not. Yeah, just this is our like starting lineup of Switch 2 edition upgrades. But like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom makes total sense because people were asking for an upgraded version of Tears of the Kingdom since Tears of the Kingdom was released. Uh, the the Switch one is just criminally underpowered, so that game doesn't run amazingly. It runs, but it could run a lot better. We all know that. So Nintendo has heard our pleas, and here we have um, both games. But yeah, Mario Party Jamboree, good game, but why that? Kirby in the Forgotten Land, good game, but why that? Metroid Prime 4, I'm just curious why it's not Switch 2 exclusive. That would that would make some sense to me, but I guess they want to send off the Switch with Metroid Prime 4. Like that will be its swan song. And then it's also like a launch game for Switch 2. So they want it to be both. It's a like a Twilight Princess situation. I'll just end up getting it on Switch 2. Like if they come out at the same time, I'll get it on Switch 2. With Breath of the Wild, though, that came out on the Wii U before it was out on the Switch, which is why I 100%ed Breath of the Wild on the Wii U, like long before I even got a Switch. So obviously, more games will be on the way. I don't know what all it takes to make the Switch to updated versions, like how hard that would be for different developers. So maybe they this was just what they could throw together quickly, or maybe it's a lot of work. Who knows? And yeah, you could probably guess from my notes how I feel about this next thing that we're about to see. I mean, look, you get points for creativity. Who wants this? Who asked for this? This looks like the most horrendous way to try to play a multiplayer game. And I'd love to be wrong. I'd love for this to be super fun and for people to just be way into it. But having some kind of surface where you can run your Joy-Con and then do motion controls to throw a ball. Come on. That is such a I don't know, that feels like an idea for a game from the era of the Wii. You know, this feels like a 15 to 20-year-old game idea, and they're just kind of insisting on this as its own standalone game. This seems like it should be a mini game that's included inside something like that Switch 2 tour. Again, maybe there's enough meat here for its own game, but who wants this when you could play like Rocket League or something? Like it has that same kind of vibe, but then we're adding in a bunch of extra steps that no one wants. I could be wrong. People could be all crazy about this game once it comes out, but I don't see it. That's satisfying. Click. I think they're just a little too in love with their own idea here. They're giving this a lot more screen time than Metroid Prime 4 had. And I feel like that's going to be a much bigger game for them. And Metroid's not even a series that does all that well financially. It's never like sold amazingly, but I think Prime 4 is going to have a lot of people jumping in. And okay, Elden Ring. If you somehow missed out on Elden Ring over the last 3 years, now you can get into it. Yippee! This is some of that third party inclusion that it's good for Nintendo to have it financially, I guess, but who wants this? You're going to find me asking this question a lot. And if people are really into all the things where I'm asking who wants this, then yeah, I guess just dunk on me in the comments. But Elden Ring, Dark Souls, Bioshock, like these are things that don't feel like they belong in the Switch. So you can play them on Switch, but why would you? It's like I've already played these games so many times on so many other systems. I didn't play Hades, but I've heard great things about it. The music is pretty top notch, so I'm sure Hades 2 has its fans. And Street Fighter 6 and whatever this robot game Arsenal is coming up, and Split Fiction and Sport Ball and Harry Potter and skateboarding. So they really just their strategy here is hit you with so many things so quickly you just notice uh, don't notice time passing. You know, it's like if you're not into a particular game, just give it 5 seconds, and you get something else. They'll need editing. They make a big to do here. Why isn't that playing? They show off a new James Bond related game or thing or something, and they don't show us what it is. So I assume it's probably another GoldenEye remake because that game is very well liked, very well remembered, and they've already remade it a couple times, but that's not going to stop them from doing it again. Are we frozen here? Let's try to refresh. Okay, it's still kind of struggling to play video here, but whatever. I'm just gonna power through it. You can see in my notes here, Hitman something. That's this, but all of these games have like whenever a game comes to the Switch, it's not the most technically impressive version of the game, so it's never called like Ultimate Edition when it's brought to the Switch. It's always called something else. Like you have with Elden Ring Tarnished Edition, you have Hitman with this long clunky title. You have lots of these games where it's overcomplicating the title. Just call it Switch version or Switch edition if you're afraid of people associating it with the other version of the game that might exist. Project 007. Okay. There's like 2 dozen Bond movies, so that could be anything. It's probably a GoldenEye remake. And yeah, Weeb game and Weeb game and they just hit you with a bunch of games in a row here. So we get Bravely Default, Yakuza 0, Hyrule Warriors 3, which gets a lot of time here. And this people have been asking for a long time, and we're finally getting it. It's, GameCube games with Switch Online. And as you would expect, we're getting dedicated controllers for that as well, which is fantastic. Some people don't like these controllers, but I think they're wrong, and I'll explain why. Just gonna let a bit more play here with the video. Going with the iconic Indigo there. I thought this was a bit strange that they would just do Wind Waker re-released with GameCube emulation as opposed to re-releasing Wind Waker HD. Maybe they just haven't figured out a solution for what to do with the Tingle bottle since the Miiverse is gone. I mean, Elden Ring and those kinds of games that have messages and so on, like those seem to do just fine without needing some external apparatus like Miiverse. So I don't know why you couldn't just reincorporate that. Yeah, we're just getting our first kind of batch of GameCube games for Switch Online here. So we're gonna get, where is it? It's in my notes. See, I thought I'd written down the GameCube games, but they'll show us here in the trailer. And so just quick pause. I mentioned the controllers. Let's get into those here. Got a nice little tub of controllers. So we'll start with the NES controller. If this was the one you started with, or if this is the only one you'd seen, I can see why it would turn you off because these have rails on the top, just like Joy-Con. They do not have a USB port on them. So you can only charge them by connecting them to the Switch console or to something that can charge Joy-Con via the rail. Got to be honest, these aren't my favorite to use, but if you're playing an NES game, it is nice to have a controller which has all the buttons you need and none of the buttons that you don't. Because the issue with playing a lot of like older games on something like a pro controller is you have all this extra stuff here that's not in the game. So instinctively reaching for the right stick to move the camera around, for example, that throws me off in N64 games all the time. So having the right controller for that era of game makes total sense. So they just sell them to you in a pack of two. I figured I wanted to have them, so I have them. But I thought, every version of this that they've done since then is way better. So next, as you would expect, Super Nintendo controller. Thankfully, no rail, though, just a USB-C port, and you can pair it with Bluetooth or by plugging it in, and it just functions like a Super Nintendo controller. So we got two of those, of course, and they did an excellent job kind of reworking the N64 controller. It's refined a bit. It doesn't have the same lethal, jagged joystick that the N64 is known for. This is a lot more comfortable. The major advantage, though, with all of these is that they are wireless, they have built-in batteries, they're Bluetooth compatible. So what that means is if you get these for your Switch, you can use them on your PC, which I have already done when emulating different games. And it's just really cozy and comfortable and wonderful being able to use like Nintendo made controllers with Nintendo games on PC, on non-Nintendo hardware. That's something that I don't know if a lot of people know about, right? That any Nintendo controller that you can just pair with a pairing button or with Bluetooth, you can just pair to a PC or a Mac, and you can then use that controller on something other than Nintendo hardware. And that goes for these ugly things as well. So the GameCube controllers that they've come up with, they're doing the iconic Indigo here, which it's more visually striking, but I had kind of hoped they would do the light gray like the Wavebird because they've already done a wireless GameCube controller. This will be a more refined version, though, obviously, with a much smaller battery compartment, probably a built in battery, as opposed to this huge, chunky, like double A coffin back here. I look forward, though, to getting a pair of these because I've got all the others and you can use them on more than just the Switch. So I could see myself playing games on PC with these GameCube controllers as well. I just kind of hope they do more than just the purple. All of these controllers are Club Nintendo. No, not Club Nintendo. That's not a thing. It was a Nintendo Online exclusive. So you have to have a subscription. Then you go on Nintendo's website. And then you can order them. The the intention was never to sell like tons and tons of these controllers. So they probably haven't produced that many. But part of the appeal with like especially the GameCube and the N64 was all the different colors that were available for the controllers. And they've only ever done the light gray ones that I have, and then it looks like they'll just do purple for the GameCube. But GameCube had some of the coolest and best controller colors of any controller I've ever seen. You got the purple, you got the black, silver, the like the orange spice color that maybe it was Japan exclusive, but I just did not see that one ever out in the wild. And I think they did white. So yeah, just only having the one in purple, you get you get some of the appeal of having a GameCube controller, but you're not really back to that place in the same way. Like you can't seek out the controller in the color that you want. You just there you go. That's what you get. These other ones kind of make sense because they only ever came in light gray until the N64 controller had like red, green, blue. Like they had a few other colors. So we'll see. I'll get them whether they're purple or whether they're any other color. It is also a little strange that it's taken this long to get GameCube emulation when they created the GameCube controller adapter for wired controller compatibility way back on the Wii U for Smash Brothers. Because for some reason, you just can't play Smash Brothers with any other controller, even though Smash Brothers didn't start with the GameCube controller. People are just in love with that controller for Smash Brothers. I like it. I get it. Uh, but Nintendo went out of their way to make this accessory for you just so you could connect your hardwired GameCube controllers, just so you could play Smash Brothers. And then this adapter hasn't been used for anything ever since, with the exception of like the Mario Sunshine remaster and a couple other things. So once again, another section here where they just kind of go through a bunch of games in a row. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't write down most of them. So we're going to hit up Deltarune, Borderlands 4, Civilization 7, more sports nonsense, survival, whatever. Enter the Gungeon, something, Cyberpunk coming to Switch. Why do people want this? Just play it on PC or some other system. Final Fantasy 7 just keeps happening. I'm not a Final Fantasy person, so I know they remastered it, but then it was a two-part remaster, and then they've re-released the remasters. So whatever, who cares? Then we get some more because this is all third-party stuff. We get some more official, like first-party Nintendo games and hotly anticipated games. So of course, Hollow Knight Silk Song, people have been waiting on a long time. There's a lot of controversy surrounding, but I don't know anything about. Professor Layton's getting a new game. And then yeah, they go through like a quick reel here of 24 games just very quickly, most of which I can't be bothered with. Oh, the video's struggling here. That does look very cool. The Marvel Cosmic Invasion, the art style. I like. And of course, as soon as this was on screen and playing, everybody's going, "Oh my god, Bloodborne! Is this Bloodborne 2? Is this a Bloodborne remaster? What is this? What's going on?" It definitely looks like a spiritual successor to Bloodborne of sorts, in the same way that Elden Ring is essentially Dark Souls 4, even though it's not called Dark Souls 4. That this may be the closest we get to a Bloodborne 2 if we get Dusk Bloods as a standalone thing, which is kind of in the vein of Bloodborne. I could see that. That makes sense. The disappointing thing, of course, is everyone just wants Bloodborne remastered. But my question would be, why would you want that on the Switch or the Switch 2? The Switch 2 is more powerful than the Switch, obviously, but it's not as powerful as any other hardware that exists. PS4, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, PS5, PC. Like people just have so many other options these days that Nintendo struggled to get third party support for so long. And now that they have it, I'm like, do they even really need it? Like they built this whole empire with just first party games and fantastic in house software. Then you can probably guess by the all caps here, I'm quite excited for these last two games. Getting Kirby Air Ride 2. Kirby Air Ride 2. Speaking of the GameCube, since we were just talking about the GameCube, Kirby Air Ride came out on the GameCube years and years ago, and it's one of my all-time favorite games. And the whole game is just a joystick and then the A button. And I think the triggers do things, but like you really don't need much more than that. You can actually play this game one-handed. Like if you have a GameCube controller, you can use left trigger instead of the A button. And it's so fun and so simple. I'm just confused it's taken them this long to capitalize on Kirby Air Ride as distinct from Kirby's usual games. They only ever made the one Kirby Air Ride, and it's fantastic, and it hasn't been re-released. So I still keep my GameCube hooked up just for this game, pretty much. And being made 20 years after the first game, it's gorgeous. It's beautiful as you would expect. And we get this mixture of all kinds of different crazy vehicles, but revisiting some of the fan favorites there from the first game. Oh, yes, Air Riders, not Air Ride 2, even though it's called the Switch 2. I would have leaned into 2 in as many of these game titles as I could. Like I would have forced the Hollow Knight creators to be like, no, this is Hollow Knight 2. Now, being that Nintendo is leaning into online so much, of course, Air Ride 2 is probably going to have online multiplayer. I hope they have good, solid, reliable couch co op and local multiplayer on Air Ride 2, because that was one of the strengths of the first Air Ride. And here we go. This is maybe the most exciting game of the bunch. We get a new Donkey Kong game, like a proper new Donkey Kong game, which we haven't had in over 10 years. Now, I know what you think. You're going, wait, didn't Donkey Kong Country just return in HD on the Switch? Yes, that came out on the Wii many years ago. That was like 2006. Well, what about Tropical Freeze? Didn't that come out on the Switch in like 2018? That came out on the Wii U first. So, and that came out in like 2014. So Donkey Kong is wonderful, and he's got all these great games, and they keep getting re-released and remastered, and that's good. Keeps the character alive, keeps interest going for the character, and now we get like a 3D platformer, which I would have thought they'd be afraid to do again after Mario or after Donkey Kong 64 was not well liked, not well loved in its day, and probably still isn't. So they've gotten over that. It looks like they say, it's been long enough. We can try this again. We can do another, take another crack at Donkey Kong in 3D. They gave him pants though. Why did they give my boy pants? Like they're giving him this like Banjo Kazooie look, like this Incredible Hulk kind of look. Of course, he's got the tie as you would expect, but what like overalls, pants and suspenders? Like why are we do why? It's like if you're gonna give him pants, there had better be a gag at some point in this game about him like mooning somebody or getting pantsed or whatever. He doesn't normally have them. Why does he have them now? Is it just so they could show off the texture on the fabric? Because I like the furry Donkey Kong from like Tropical Freeze. And a great title, wonderful title, Bonanza. Of course, it's spelled Bonanza, but he's bananas. So it's perfect. And I'm not sold completely on this new Donkey Kong design that we get in this game and in Mario Kart 9, but it's growing on me. I'm sure I will like it more as I see it in context in game. They've made him very expressive and yeah, really just leaning into his ape strength in this new game. That is maybe the most striking thing is that there's so much like destructible environment for Donkey Kong to interact with. Like I don't think of a big gorilla as being a thing that runs around moving heaven and earth. He can be, I guess, because he's got the strength for it. They're powering him up. So you saw in the trailer there Donkey Kong like digging and doing things like that. And we get the Mario Kart 9 launch bundle, which conspicuously is not called Mario Kart 9. It's called Mario Kart World. Okay. That sounds like a section of your theme park as opposed to the next in the series of Mario Kart games, since you've been numbering them for a while. Right, we had Mario Kart 7 on the DS and then 8 on the Switch. They're like, no, they're not numbered anymore. Just kidding. And yeah, there we are. So this is I'll have to cut down a lot of this video, but one thing that I had hoped that we would see that we did not end up seeing was, like I mentioned earlier, the ability to utilize a Switch and a dock separately from each other or be able to like cast video from the Switch to the dock. That would have allowed for things like the Wii U and the DS to be emulated on the Switch. That's the hardest thing. Is like you've got two whole screens here. How do you recreate that with just your TV? Wow, this is making a camera freak out. Um, yeah, the DS and the Wii U, they both are built on the premise of having two screens, and there isn't really a good way to do that with a Switch. One workaround though that would make a lot of sense would be if you could use a Switch as a controller on a Switch 2. Like you could connect them wirelessly and that would allow you to do some of the things that emulation, like in order to emulate DS and Wii U games, we're just going to need two screens. Like in a lot of games, I've got Steam World Dig pulled up here. In a lot of games, that bottom screen is nothing. Like here it's a menu, and I'm on the pause screen. But as you're playing, it's the map, and that's usually what you see: is a map, a menu, your inventory. The second screen isn't always utilized in DS games or Wii U games, but for some games, it's integral. So I don't know how you would do, for example, like Phantom Hourglass or Spirit Tracks without having a screen in the hands of the player. Because you could have the screen displaying on the TV, but you also need the screen where the player can interact with it. So it's great that we're getting GameCube games. That's been a missing piece for a long time. Still, though, a big missing piece, it feels like, is 3DS and DS and Wii U games without some way to have a screen in your hand and projected from the dock at the same time. I don't see a way to easily re-release Wii U or DS or 3DS games. And that's a shame because that's years and years of games that are just left by the wayside because we can't figure out a good convenient way to manage the hardware. That seems like that's doable though. Like it seems like it could be done. So one piece of speculation that people talked about was like a second screen attachment for the Switch. Obviously, this was inspired by that second USB port on the top. And as we see in the trailer here, they used it for the webcam, which, whatever, webcam. But this confirms that it is usable with accessories while the game is running. And the second screen attachment idea is intriguing, and I think there is a good solid proof of concept for it. Some people they're like, no, it'd be too heavy, it would be too expensive, it wouldn't work, and I kind of disagree with that. And here's like a good example of why. So I've got this phone, the LG V60 from 2020. So this has been discontinued for like 5 years. What's great about it though is this case. It's got the same display built in as the display that's built into the phone. So there's no difference between these screens as far as brightness or color accuracy or whatever. They're the same exact identical screen. And so you just drop your phone into this case, and then the USB-C port that's in the bottom of the phone powers this case. So it's actually not hard to imagine a scenario where you have your Switch and then you have something plugged into the top that folds down over the top and gives you that second screen experience, that second screen option in a handheld format. But there's no way to then make that work through the dock or on a TV, which would be unfortunate. And of course, if you increase the thickness or size of the Switch with an accessory like that, that creates a problem for trying to dock it. It's going to knock the screen off as you try to drop it into the dock. Um, this though, it's not flimsy and it's not super expensive. This case was like $199, and then the phone was, I want to say, $699 or $799 when it was released 5 years ago. I've only broken one of these cases, and so it wasn't terribly expensive to replace. It was like $200, but I could see a second screen attachment for the Switch 2 being a similar sort of buy-in where you'd have this external accessory that's an extra $200 or $250 that then gives um, those like tech junkie, tech enthusiast gamers like myself something else to kind of play around with, or another way to interact with the Switch. So this is my daily driver phone. I've had it, like, say, for almost 5 years. It's pretty robust. It's pretty sturdy. So like I could see Nintendo making their own version of that that can withstand some punishment. That's a bit sturdy. That it's just hard to see how that could be incorporated through the dock without having either the dock running without the Switch in it or without having a second Switch in the equation. I feel like though that is doable. So we got through that hour-long video. Granted, I skipped through a lot of it, but we got through that faster than I expected. So I think I'm just going to stop the recording here and then figure out how to edit it later. Yeah, those are kind of my thoughts on the Switch 2 launch, and I'm excited to see what other games we get and what other features it'll have. But yeah, for now, that's a very strong showing, very strong start for Switch 2.